So Conor McGregor just got his black belt in Jiu Jitsu from John Kavanagh. And who would have thought? But people in the comments are not being very nice. I really don't know what brought that on, because typically on social media, people are very polite, they're very courteous, but for whatever reason, that's not the case here. A lot of comments about how the belt's fake, about how he doesn't deserve it. Here's one that says, "Don't let Islam hear about this." That one's funny. I won't lie about that. That one is hilarious. One thing is for sure, there has been a narrative for many, many years that Conor is not good on the ground. And clearly, this opinion has not changed for most casual fans. But where did this come from? Is it true? And how can Conor be a black belt if Khabib's a white belt? Well, it's easy to just look at the few times he's been outclassed on the ground and say, yeah, well, that's all you need to see. But I think we should look just a little bit deeper and see if we can come to a more educated answer. Well, our first example comes from Conor's second UFC fight ever against Max Holloway. Conor in the second and third round took Max down multiple times, controlled him the entire time, knee sliced right through Max's guard a couple times, getting side control, knee on belly, even mounting him for a while. We then go to Conor's very next fight against Diego Brandao. Diego shoots a takedown. They end up in a standing clinch position. Both of them have over-unders. Conor then does a turning lateral takedown to end up on top. Brandao rolled under for a leg lock, got Conor in a heel hook, and Conor rolled out of it, showing really good submission defense. The next notable fight is against Dennis Siver. He took Conor down a few times, but the second they hit the canvas, Conor would push Siver's head down, turn to a base, and immediately get back up. Siver did not have a second of control time that entire fight. But the most notable thing from this fight was Conor had a really slick transition to get to the mount. And now this leads us to Chad Mendes. This was the fight where the narrative began about how bad Conor is on the ground. And it makes perfect sense why. Firstly, yeah, Conor's ground game didn't look very good in this fight. This fight was also seen at the time to be the biggest fight so far in UFC history. So all my prior examples, there was about a fraction of the amount of eyes on those fights compared to this one. And lastly, Chad was seen as the best wrestler in the entire division, so it really seemed like Conor couldn't hang at the top level. In the beginning of the fight, when Conor did end up on his back, he'd immediately get feet on hips, push Chad away, and stand back up. And he was able to defend the first couple takedowns. But when the power double started coming, Conor, he wasn't sprawling. He was getting taken down pretty easily. Chad passed his guard once, almost ended up in a mounted crucifix. Conor was able to get back to half guard, but he wasn't making any effort to get back up. He was just electing to stay on his back. He did a good job throwing elbows from there, but still he was losing the rounds. It wasn't until Chad went for a guillotine. Conor rolls out of the guillotine, showing another great submission defense, gets up, and then knocks Chad out. For starters, there's a couple important variables to look at here. For one, if you watched the Notorious documentary, you know Conor had a torn ACL going into this fight. And Darren Till would tell you from his fight with Driscus that it is difficult to defend takedowns when you don't have a knee. The second one, Conor took the fight on 2 weeks' notice, which obviously is a very bad idea when you're fighting someone who is a very bad matchup for you. You want a full camp, you want to bring in a bunch of high-level wrestlers, you want to simulate exactly what you're going to experience in the fight, in camp. Conor couldn't do that. He was preparing for Jose Aldo, who is a Muay Thai fighter. The only plus was Chad also took the fight on 2 weeks' notice, and he gassed out really bad in the second round. Now, I'm sure it's a combination from him not having a full camp, but also Conor brutalized his body very badly, which absolutely destroys your gas tank. We then move on to the first Nate Diaz fight, where there are basically two examples to talk about from this fight. One, Conor hit Nate Diaz with an X-guard sweep, which shows you are a classically trained Jiu Jitsu player. You're not hitting X-guard sweeps if all you do is MMA grapple. It's not happening. And this is really impressive because of how good Nate Diaz's jiu-jitsu is. The reason I think this little move, though, flew under the radar was because Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg just didn't know what they were looking at.
Takes him down. He'll pull guard, Joe.
No, Nate did not pull guard. He got swept. Another reason why no one talks about it is, obviously, it pales in comparison to how the fight ended, with Conor shooting a bad takedown, almost getting guillotined, getting mounted, and then getting rear naked choked. Now, you can definitely say that whole transition really showed off Nate's skills, but did it also show Conor's lack of skills? Well, I'd contribute it more to Conor's terrible game plan for that fight. I mean, he really sat down with his coaches and went, okay, Nate Diaz, he has a chin made out of iron, and he has cardio for days. So let's go crazy at him and throw every single capoeira kick in the book to attempt to knock him out. Well, unfortunately, Conor found himself going into the second round, gassed, throwing the entire kitchen sink at Nate. Some honorable mentions. Conor, he controlled Eddie Alvarez really well from the top after he dropped him, and obviously the Khabib fight's been talked to death. Conor defended a few takedowns really well. It wasn't until he got hit with that monster overhand that he really got brutalized. But just like the Chad Mendes fight, when he did get taken down, he just elected to stay on his back and didn't really try to get up. The last example we'll talk about today was the guillotine attempt on Dustin Poirier in their third fight. Now, I just made a video about guillotines, and if you watched that, you'd know it wasn't the best guillotine attempt. Certainly wasn't terrible. Poirier definitely was feeling it, but the way Conor dropped to guard with it, it really could have been better. He didn't have any control over Poirier's body, so Dustin was able to basically go completely vertical to take a lot of the pressure off. But I want to show you a really interesting clip from when Conor was in camp for this fight. Now that's a good guillotine, really solid, and you saw the second Conor grabbed it, the guy immediately tried to spin out because it was tight. So Conor understands the mechanics of the guillotine. We see it right there. But as I've talked about before, for also another multitude of reasons, mentally, I don't think Conor was there in that fight. When he went for that guillotine, you could tell he was really unsure of himself there. He didn't grab it with any kind of confidence, and it really cost him in that fight. Now, after basically going over every single time Conor's ever been on the ground in MMA, what are our takeaways? Well, I think there are two big things here. Conor has, without a doubt, shown an ability to be high level on the ground, but also he chooses not to use it a lot of times. The reason he does this is really simple. Like I said before, Conor's best attribute is his striking, and that's where he has the highest chance of winning. So when he gets taken down by really high level grapplers like Khabib, like Chad Mendes, is he really going to try to waste all this energy to keep exploding back up, to keep trying to throw offense off his back or go for submissions when that's not his best chance of winning? His best chance of winning in those situations is to just ride the round out, wait till he gets back to his feet, and then go for the knockout. See, Conor never plans to win decisions. He just doesn't. His plan is always to win by knockout. Now, unfortunately, to the untrained eye, which is 99% of MMA fans, this means Conor just doesn't know what he's doing on the ground. Why he's getting taken down and he's just getting stuck there. Like, this guy sucks. So, well, every punch Conor throws is 100% strength and power. He's not going to waste all his valuable energy trying to wrestle with you. He'll just hang out on his back, maybe throw some elbows, stay safe, wait till he gets back on the feet. So Does Conor McGregor deserve a black belt in jiu-jitsu? Without a doubt. Oh, and also the reason why Khabib's a white belt is just because he doesn't formally do jiu-jitsu. His background is wrestling, sambo, and judo. He still uses and practices a lot of jiu-jitsu techniques, which is why he's so dominant on the ground. Purely skill-wise, he is 100% a black belt.